Everyone, I hope you're having a great November. It's been a minute since I posted anything, and I thought I would remedy that. So today, I thought I would share with you the creation of an intergalactic carnival vampire for Magic the Gathering's Infinity series. So I hope you enjoy. Let's take a look. Alright, so let's dig in. So now when you get an assignment to create something for a card for Magic the Gathering, a lot of times you're going to get this information from the art director, and in this case, for this particular assignment, it was going to be a creature. It was going to be for a black color-coded card, and so that's what's indicated in the initial information. They also tell you where the location is going to be, where it exists in the world. In this case, we're going to be in a booth in the midway of this sort of like interstellar kind of carnival or circus. Like they call it the Astrotorium. And this character is going to be standing in front of an attraction, like a little booth, like where you'd win prizes and stuff. And it reads Planar Oddities. Now, the character that I'm going to be creating, he is a vampire. He works on the midway, and the thing is about the attraction that he's standing in front of is that it is blatantly fake. I mean, it is kind of funny. The whole point of this is to be funny. The title of the piece is Scampire. He's basically a scam artist, right? Scamming people out of their money, and he's asking you to give him money to go look at these sort of dangerous, like man-eating plants. Except, they're kind of not. They're these lotus flowers that are sort of painted black to be scary. They've got false little teeth pasted all over them, like awkwardly and obviously, to make them look like dangerous sort of plant creatures. But it's all fake, and that's part of the fun of it. He's in terms of his personality, he's a total scammer. He's hamming it up for the crowd. And another important note that the art director let me know is that it'd be cool if the Scampire had a hat, some really interesting hat. And the thing is that the costumes for a lot of the employees that work at this carnival were all more or less set for what they needed to be. They were already designed. And we needed to sort of like add something when there was going to be something like a prop, like a hat, that kind of fit into this retro future kind of aesthetic that they were going for. So let's dig in. So now, when I get an assignment like this, the first thing I'm thinking about, of course, is the star attraction, which is the character, in this case, the Scampire, the vampire. And I thought about the kind of gestures, attitude, facial expressions that that character would be having, given the direction I was given. So let's take a look. So here we are. We're going to figure out some performance, and I'm going to shoot some reference. And Marlon Brando, I am not, or substitute any super awesome actor that you can think of. You'll also notice that I look a little different. I actually did this assignment a few years ago when I was a little bit heavier. So you're seeing a older version of me in this photo reference. Now my lovely wife is shooting pictures of me performing out the vampire character, and she's in the background there, mercifully blurred out as she asked if you want to be in my video, but that's okay. So here I am hamming it up, trying to get into the spirit of the vampire. Now, one of the interesting things is that this is a really important aspect of design, at least in designing characters like this for me, much kind of like an animator would in front of a mirror. You're trying to figure out the actual performance, trying to figure out the character of the character, and I use this method to sort of assist me in the coming up with the final drawing. So there's always people talk about, well, how do you use references? Using references is bad. Using reference isn't bad if you're using reference as a tool to sort of help you get at the design you're looking for. And the thing is, most people forget is that, unfortunately, most of us don't have photographic memories that can recall everything they've ever seen ever and then just be able to draw it out. So for me, having photo reference really helps. In this case, I found some really cool poses that would help me in making the sketches for the Scampire. So let's take a look at some sketches. this is the first one, and this is catching the Scampire in the middle of mid-call. He's sort of talking about, he's calling out to the people, and you're seeing him in a moment when he's sort of gesturing to the plants, he's gesturing to himself, and he's talking directly to you, the audience, which I thought was pretty cool. Now the second one is a little bit more sly. This is a Scampire that is a little bit more confident, for sure. He's looking right at us, and he has kind of got this edgy sort of teenagery feel, which I think is really fun. Also notice the paintbrush that's coming out of his back pocket. He has freshly painted these man-eating lotus plants and with black paint. So it is, he's caught in the middle of scam, but he don't care. He's going to scam you anyways. He's going to tell you his spiel, and I found that to be pretty fun about this particular sketch and this particular pose. Now this last one, I wanted to do something a little bit different. I actually didn't shoot this one. I just put a mirror in front of my desk when I had the idea, and it's sort of like, yes. This is kind of a more malevolent, sly, maybe mischievous kind of vampire, but I liked it a lot. But he, but after looking at it, after I drew it, I was like, he's really kind of creepy, And so I don't know if that was quite given the right vibe, but it was fun to sort of contrast these different expressions and gestures to sort of find the character for the illustration. So after having shown the art director my 3 ideas and to get a buy-off on which way to proceed, she really responded to the second one, B, which I actually really liked a lot there too. So what you're seeing here is the comparison of the 3 different sketches, the 3 different poses that I sort of came up with. Then there is the, of course, larger version of the final sketch that was approved. And to give you some context, that's the photo reference I used. So the Scampire does not look like me. However, and even the gesture and the pose, the final one is quite different enough from the actual photos. What it is I use the photos as a reference. So this is maybe helps to shed some light on how illustrators can use photo reference, even if they look nothing like the thing that they're designing, to aid them in coming up with the final look, the final drawing or design. Now, getting into the actual painting. This particular piece was done all digital. So I drew it digital, and I drew it at the same scale as what the final art was going to be, the final resolution. So I worked digitally on top of a copy of my sketches and just built up from there. Now, in doing so, I use a lot of techniques that I did when I was working in animation, like on finished background paintings. And so I tend to like to use the same sort of methodology in creating illustrations for other things like this. So I work from back to front, and I refine and I block in the final design and the color and the lighting, the effects, the atmosphere. All this stuff is sort of like worked up together towards the final painting. So here's a look at the background. It is in black and white. I've removed the vampire in the foreground so I can concentrate on working on the background. And so here's where we begin. I first block in the colors that I think I'm going to use. Now, in some cases, I will, especially if it's an elaborate setup, I'll work up a whole bunch of different color keys to kind of get the right feel, the right mood. What you're looking at here is more or less kind of not a one-shot deal, but I had a very clear idea of what I thought the color was going to be and what the lighting was going to be, and so I just sort of like went for it here. In part, this is a response to the actual local color of the costumes that I knew the character would need to wear because that had already been designed for characters that appear in the card set, and I had some really clear ideas about colors I wanted to react to both the skin tone of the vampire itself and the sort of color of the plants, the black lotus too, as well. So those were the 2 main components that I designed my color ideas around. Now, as you're working on these pieces and as you're submitting like in progress sort of looks to your art director, sometimes new ideas pop up, and sometimes these new ideas are brilliantly fun. In this case, the idea here was that maybe perhaps those little tiny teeth that were stuck onto the lotus wouldn't be as effective as something that was really obvious, something that you really understood right away. And so the art director had suggested, well, we take some plastic toy fangs, like the kind you wear at Halloween if you're a vampire, and put those onto the lotus and have them rigged up so that they could be like opening and closing, in a very scary but awkward, blatantly fake kind of way. It was not scary at all. It was kind of funny. I think that was really the point. And so I drew and sketched that in for painting. Next, I sort of blocked in electric light that was going to take place behind the sign. Now, I added a bit of glow. And this is, obviously this is from my black and white sketch from before, but the idea here with this sort of atmospheric light that we see off screen, and it is off screen, you don't see the light source, you're just seeing the effects of the light, is to create a way of moving your eye, which you'll see when we have the vampire in place, across the vampire and to where I want you to look. But the other thing also is to create a layer of light that separates the foreground vampire from the background elements. And so blocking this in will sort of give me that look and that feel. This is adding on the sign. And now we've added the vampire. Now the vampire is a line drawing, and he's just got basically a flat white card underneath the line drawing. And my first step would be kind of like with the background, is to start to block in the color. And when I block in the color is going to be flat color. Now, the flat color in part is to just get the costume all right, but especially on the head, what you're seeing is I'm working out the ideas that I had for the skin tone. I didn't want the vampire to look like just regular, normal skin, because he's a vampire. So I wanted his skin to be paler in general. But compounding on that was that I wanted a kind of cool blue light striking him, which would accent his skin color and kind of give this cool, vibe to the whole thing. And when you're doing something, when you're working with the temperature of light, a lot of times what you need to do is you have to adjust for the color of that light in the shadows, meaning and these are sort of general principles of light, and to varying degrees it'll register differently on your eye, and it certainly registers differently in a camera and in print. But when you've got a cool light, the shadows in opposite and complement tend to get a little bit warmer. If you've got a warm light, the shadows tend to get a little cooler. If you go out like around the wee hours of sunset or just before sunset, you'll notice how purple and cool colored the shadows look. That's an effect of light temperature. Anyways, so when I'm blocking in skin color under this cool light, I'm trying to be mindful of those temperature shifts in the shadows. And I'm seeing that, I can see that very clearly in the most basic, simple block-ins. Here's bringing back the line. Now, the next step then is to block in the shadows. And the shadows obviously is giving us some form, but it's also giving us some light direction. Now, this next step is taking the light and dropping it off, falling off, or vignetting, however you want to, which term fits your mind best. But I wanted the light to focus mostly on the top part of him, from his face to his chest to his hand gestures. Also, I wanted it to drop off in light because the drop off in light would create a stronger silhouette, especially towards the bottom, which would pop him off against the atmospheric light that is so prevalent at the lower part of the illustration. Now, one of the things that happens when you are painting in Photoshop, let me back up and tell you this. Photoshop is a fantastic painting tool. However, it is also a fantastic photo editing tool, and it's also a fantastic photo compositing tool, right? So you've got these three amazing tools with overlapping kind of things that it can do, but that will give you wonderful images, but don't necessarily translate exactly the way that painting traditionally from life will do. A lot of times, for example, if you just simply darken something, you may get the right adjustment in value, light to dark, but you may not get the right adjustment in temperature, which is like the shadows. We talked earlier about how the shadows need to be a little bit warmer. In this case, the shadows, when I first darkened it, were warmer, but it was also a little bit muddy. And the thing is that I knew there was going to be so much cool light bouncing around in the scene, bouncing around in the space, if this was a real space, that some of it would be reflecting up into the shadows. And so what I wanted to do was just cool the shadows a little bit in this, where I had the drop off in the vignette, so that it would feel like it was hooked into the world, which is what I did in that last step. Now what I've done here is I've sort of heightened some focus light, or added some focus light to the vampire's face and to his hands. And this is now tying into that light that's in the upper left-hand corner, in part, that there's light off screen. And at this point it feels kind of ambiguous, but there's a little bit of light that is filling the front of his form, showing his face and his hands. And it is also guiding your eye a bit. So it's helping lead you from his face to his hand that's in the foreground, to his other hand that's further behind it, which is also leading you to look at the plants. I adjusted the temperature on that. Again, whenever you're adding light or shadow, and if you're doing it with an adjustment layer in Photoshop, it may not give you the right temperature of the light or the shadow. And so I go back in and I adjust that subtlety. And then the last sort of lighting cue that I sort of indicated in was the rim light that would be hitting the character. And this again is coming from that light that's off screen to the upper left hand corner. But this helps pop out the form and will later be used to sort of heighten the movement of light across his body and helping you look at where I want you to look. So now the next step is going to be transitioning to the painting. Unfortunately, when I was painting this, I didn't have the I didn't think to record my painting process at the time. I just happened to have some of these stages along the way, so I got to share that with you. What I can tell you is this, is that what we're looking at here is essentially a cross between a final layout. It is the rough foundation for the color key, the colors that I had in my mind. I could see clearly where I wanted to go, but the next step from here, after getting it approved, and I got it disapproved at this stage, was to then refine it, and then to paint out all the lines, and to paint everything out more opaquely. And so you're going to see that's what happens in the next step. And so the majority of the line drawing will be gone, and it will be paint. And this is how the final Scampire painting went out. Now, one of the things to note in here is that there are changes in the temperature of light. So, I always wanted a cool blue light to sort of affect or be the dominating color, at least on Vampire. We even see a bit of this cool blue light, sort of off frame a bit to the upper left-hand corner, which is providing the rim light. Some of that light's even penetrating through the membranes of his ears. There's a bit of a cool blue fill light too as well, and all the light's moving in the same direction. It's moving across his form, it's picking up on his hands, it's leading you to the man-eating black lotuses to the right-hand side of the painting, and even they are picking up a bit of that blue light too as well. Now, there is light that was just sort of a neutral light, ambient atmospheric light in the lower left-hand corner in the previous stage, and I decided to sort of dial that up to be a little bit more warm and orange, because I knew I wanted this sort of sickly green-yellow neon tubes to the right, and I wanted something to complement that. And so part of these sort of color fluctuations just to make it interesting to look at, to help guide your eye through the painting. And as I'm thinking and plotting color, I'm thinking, there's a predominant color that I want to be the key thing. In this case, you can't escape that blue light, but you also can't escape that magenta and violet that is also really, really strong in the composition. And so I like to work, at least in this composition, like split complementary colors, meaning I'm taking colors on either side of the color wheel, and I'm also splitting a couple of colors off from each branch to sort of kind of make it all sort of work together in harmony, but also to be very, very playful and fun, which is what we have here. Now, this painting is more or less, I would say, 95% done, but a lot of times what I'll do is I'll want to add just a little bit of extra texture to it, just no reason other than I like it. I like that look. It was something I discovered when I was doing on Timeless, working on the Timeless illustrations, and I like experimenting with that and other illustrations I do. So what I did was I took this painting and in Photoshop and applied a filter to it. So I applied a posterized filter. Now, in doing so, what it does is it takes two values, bumps them up against each other, and where they bump up against each other and there's a difference, it creates a line work. So that's what we did next. I'll show you that. So here it is. Now here's subtle line work that's actually all throughout the painting, and what it does is it kind of adds a little bit of extra texture to the painting, but in its pure form it's a little bit too strong for me. And so what I do is I take an eraser and I erase out where I don't want it to be, and where it's left, if it's still a little bit too strong, I will make it a little bit transparent so it won't be as strong. And so in achieving the final look with the paint and adding that additional texture, that's what I do. So let's take a look at the final. All right. And that was just a little subtle tweak there, but only a little bit of the line work is left in place, and that is how the final painting turned out. And what I sent to Wizards of the Coast, that became the fantastically fun Scampire for Magic the Gathering's Unfinity series. Well, I hope that was informative and that was fun to watch, and as much fun as it was for me making it. So I'm going to be back posting more things, more art, more updates on Timeless and other stories I'm working on, and some demonstrations. So stay tuned, and hope you come back, and we'll see you soon. Take care.